from an SQ perspective, we separate empath from compassion. And in leadership, the strength that you want to, the muscle that you want to build is compassion. What is your thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree with you that you want to build compassion, empathy, because unless you can put yourself into somebody else's place, how can you effectively lead? Some of the questions that you had in your questionnaire, prior to coming in, is that you talk about things like team building activities that were a success or not. And I find that some of the team building activities that some places employ are things like, we're going to do trust falls with each other. And you don't know what somebody's experiences are, if they even like to be touched.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Everyone, welcome to another episode of Create Magic at Work. I was laughing with this guest before we started hitting record, so forgive me. The garbage man just pulled up outside and was making all kinds of noise, and we're like, we're going to roll it. This is real life. My guest today is Becc Nelson. She is a spiritual mentor and a licensed MFT. What really drew me to Becc is she also helps leaders and people, she's a transformational coach, break free from feeling like they're in this constant giving cycle and break free from that depleted energy from it. So I was so excited to have Becc on the show today for everyone, because if you feel like this exhaustion and you're not really sure where it's coming from, I wonder if you are a giver. And well, we're going to get into all this, but I wonder if it's from overgiving. And we're going to talk about that today. So Becc, welcome to Create Magic at Work.
Oh, I'm super excited to be here. And, you had the garbage man. I had my phone ringing. Total real life happening here.
Right? Yeah. And I'm in a 2-story building, so I'm up on the top looking down, and it's just, they always like to start when I hit record, whatever is going on outside.
Just like little kids want to talk to them as soon as they get on the phone. Yep.
Right.
Or dogs bark. Yep.
Exactly. So tell all of us if I missed anything, or a little bit more about you and what you do.
So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I know that LMFT can be mystical. What does that mean? And that basically means I'm a licensed mental health provider, which I've been doing since 1992. That makes me sound really old, but I started off doing substance abuse, and then with mental health, and then moved into family counseling and relationship and couples therapy. And then as of the past few years, I've also kind of found my spiritual path and started to add spiritual energy healing components to the work that I do with my mental health clients, and found that there was sort of like a quantum leap in the treatment that I was providing.
I love that. So I'm curious, what part of the spiritual work that you started doing with your clients helped them have this quantum leap? And the way I think of quantum leap when you're saying that is like, I aligned with my future positive self that I want to be faster.
I like that. I'm going to use that, Amy. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm your new marketing person. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you. So I find that, and I'm not going to say this is every therapist, but I find that a lot of people were expressing that when they would go to therapy, they would talk about, we call this in the therapy world, content versus process. So content means that people come into therapy and they talk about the content of their week. They tell me stories about interactions with their kids, their partners, people at work, etc. So they just tell me what happened during their week.
Mm.
Now, that in itself does have a therapeutic advantage, because just getting your story out of your body energetically and putting it out there, it does make you feel better because you're releasing some of that energy. But
Mm-hmm.
what was happening was that I would find that they would come back,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Because they were not doing what I call the process, which is, okay, these things happen and these are the stories of your interactions, but what's the bigger picture? What are the cycles that you keep repeating that all these stories are just more evidence of? So we need to talk about the bigger picture, which is, what are we missing? What are the cycles that are the patterns that are coming back up again? And those are the parts that we need to heal, because you're releasing that energy, but let's look at these patterns. What is it that you need to figure out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very insightful. Being a spiritual intelligence executive coach, I have become aware by doing the work myself that verbal processing is not enough. And once you spend time with this is just my experience, once you spend time with a therapist or a coach, if you've done a lot of verbal processing in that session, there has to be a spiritual component, from a faith neutral standpoint, to clear that energy. So oftentimes, if I'm working with a client and we've talked a lot in a session, rather than maybe doing a creative visualization modality or something like that, I will tell them, you need to do whatever it means for you to clear your energy, or to meditate or something like that, whatever that looks like, because all these words just got flown out into the universe and they need to be cleared. So I'm wondering if you're resonating with that, or if that's kind of what you're talking about.
It is. And how do you release that energy? And I guess it depends on if you're more open to the spiritual piece and if you believe in things like cord cutting.
Mm,
That
yes.
particularly when you are somebody who's a constant giver or empath, or whatever term you're comfortable with using, you do tend to naturally absorb the energy of other people. So not only do you have your stuff, but you have the energy of other people that attach themselves to you in the form of energetic cords. And how do you release those energetic cords and send them back to the person that they rightfully belong to, so that you're not carrying your stuff plus theirs?
So insightful. So good. And it's language, right? Like, whatever you want to call it, you don't have to call it cord cutting. Use whatever language resonates with you. I've heard I share that, if you hug somebody that's muddy, you're going to get some mud on you. And so it's really great to just do like an energetic wash through meditation, negative energy clearing, something like that. So you're not walking around with mud on you. Let's get into empath. You brought up empathic. I feel like, and I've addressed this in a couple of episodes, that the pop culture and like the Instagram culture, I think, really perpetuates some of these deep spiritual practices, and they become kind of like a pop culture type post, right? So I feel like everybody today is saying they're an empath as a badge of honor. I was just talking about this with a friend the other day, and my friend was like, I had this realization that, like, I'm having these empathic qualities, which is taking on the feelings of others as my own, because I had trauma when I was growing up. And from an SQ perspective, we separate empath from compassion. And in leadership, the strength that you want to, the muscle that you want to build is compassion. What is your thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree with you that you want to build compassion, empathy, because unless you can put yourself into somebody else's place, how can you effectively lead? Some of the questions that you had in your questionnaire, prior to coming in, is that you talk about things like team building activities that were a success or not. And I find that some of the team building activities that some some places employ are things like, oh, we're going to do trust falls with each other, and you don't know what somebody's experiences are, if they even like to be touched, right? Would they even do that exercise with their own family? Forget about people that they work with and have a very marginal relationship with. I don't want to do trust falls with those people, So you need to
Yes.
be able to say to yourself, okay, the activities that we want to do, is that appropriate for everybody, because you don't know what their experiences are. That being said, you talk about being empathic, and yes, empathic is a whole different thing than being compassionate, because you're right, when you're empathic, you actually feel other people's feelings to the point where you can't sometimes tell the difference between, is this me experiencing this, or is this other person? I actually just came from a session before this, and she was talking about trying to pick out, she's trying to pick out a new office and that kind of thing. And she's got some serious reservations. Now, the version of her that I know always jumps in and says, oh, I'll figure it out, but her mother is very different. And her mother is always like, oh, you think that's the right thing to do, and you need to be wise about this and everything. So she was talking about that with some trepidation. And I said, I don't think that's your energy. I think that's your mother talking. And that's what an empath will do, is am I actually experiencing my own feelings, or those of the other person? And sometimes when you're being empathic, it's almost difficult to lead, because you have to be somebody who can make those boundaries and understand, this is not my stuff, this is yours. But I can use that as a tool to be a better leader, without getting entangled into that.
That was so powerful right now. I just had an insight when you were sharing that is what muddles up people being able to access their own inner wisdom and compassion and make decisions for themselves from their higher self or higher power. And the ability, this is just on a whole other level with SQ, spiritual intelligence, the ability to differentiate between what your voice is, what your inner voice is, and what other voice might be playing a script in your head, heart, body. Skill building in recognizing that, critical, the way you explained it. And if you identify as an empath, well, to me, that's a nudge from the universe. Hey, let's start really differentiating whose voice is what before I make a decision.
Correct. And so the question might be, how do you do that? Well, that's a skill that you work on over time. Who am I really? And when I say this, where is that coming from in my body? Like, if I think about, in this particular example, if I think about taking on this office, how do I really feel about that? And where's that feeling coming from? Am I excited? Is that in my solar plexus? Am I feeling, in my heart? Am I having anxiety about this? And is that something, when I think about this particular situation, is that who I normally am?
So good. So good. I want to get into talking about, because this is a big one for, I'm sure, a lot of the Create Magic at Work listeners, because a lot of people that want to do leadership work for the greater good can often find that they are in a space where they are constantly giving their energy to others and then feeling disappointed that they're not getting anything back from that giving. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that we can identify if we're in that space? And what is a way that we can maybe pull ourselves out of that space and find some balance?
I think one of the biggest ways is that you start to recognize that you might be feeling a little bit resentful or even disappointed. And that's because you typically are in a situation where you don't feel like you are getting back the energy that you're putting into your relationships, that you're investing. And a big part of that is because if you're a constant giver and you do so without boundaries, to the expense of your own energy and needs, that it's exhausting, because your energy is actually pulling in people who are in need of your energy, who are in need of you giving. So not only are you overgiving of yourself, but you're also pulling into your energy other people who need that. So when you look around, are you finding that you have reciprocal relationships that's kind of that give and take? Or do you feel like I'm always doing this and I don't get that in return at all?
Yeah. How do you, so I've heard this said many a times, or, I've seen it in advice given. If I'm leading and I feel like I'm constantly giving to my team or even taking on the workload that the others should be doing, because I think that is what being a great leader is. Go ahead and have the weekend off. I'll take this project, or, whatever. How do I get out of that if that's the role I've been playing for, let's say, years?
Yeah, you're making a good point, because what happens is over time, if you try to get out of that role, people are so used to you being in it that if you try to pull out of it, you're going to feel guilty. Right. But also the other people around you, you would like to think they're going to be supportive and say, you know what, you're doing too much. You need to pull back, which hopefully some of them do. But a large majority of them don't want that to stop if that's who you've always been. So you're going to get some pushback on that. And that's very normal. And it probably means you're doing it right. Right. It's like when you're given with your kid all the time, when, you, I don't know, put them on restriction. And then a day later, you're like, no, it's fine. I didn't mean it. Or, yeah, you can have your toy back. If they're used to you doing that, then the time that you put your foot down and say, I'm not going to do this anymore, then you're going to get pushback. And it's going to make it harder for you. So it's going to become harder before it becomes easier. What I would tell people is, most of the time when people overgive, they are really naturally giving people anyway. They, by nature, like to serve other people. It fills them. It makes them happy. And so I'm not, when people hear, you're giving too much and you need to pull back, what they hear is this black or white. That means that you need to stop giving, period. And no, that is not the answer. And I think too many people do that. They say, well, that's just who I am and it makes me happy. Okay, you can still do that, but make sure that when you make a decision to do something, it's because you want to, not because you feel like you have to. And how do you tell the difference? Well, do a check-in with your body. If I'm about to do, I don't know, if I'm about to do something because it's somebody's birthday, but I feel like every time it's my birthday, I don't get that back, then say to yourself, what is the reason that I'm doing this? Why am I celebrating this person's birthday, as an example? Or why am I taking over their weekend shift for them? Well, you know what? It's really not a big deal for me. I like to serve, and I know that they have kids and I don't. So that's something that I'm doing out of the goodness of my heart. And there's no other feelings in there like resentment or any of those other feelings, because as soon as you're feeling those, it's a sign that your body's telling you you've crossed the line. But if you are doing it purely from your heart and you're saying, I like to do this, and when you do a check-in with yourself, there's no, hey, I don't get any of this back, then that's a sign that you've crossed the line. Because what's happening is you're putting them and their life ahead of taking care of yourself. And that's when you start to get exhausted.
So a couple of things I got from that. First is, when you start setting a boundary and changing the way you're giving, it's not just stopping your giving. If that's your innate personality or characteristic that you have, it's setting boundaries with it and understanding that feelings of guilt are normal, and that means you're on the right track. If you feel a little bit guilty that, oh, I didn't take on this project for this person this weekend, I feel bad. I usually do that for them. That's one way. So okay, I'm on the right track to maybe reclaiming some of my power or some of my energy. Second, I got from that is their reaction to your boundary setting is not your concern. Because of course people are going to want you to continue to stay in that giving space because it's benefiting them.
They have benefited
right?
from it.
Yes.
So there's a term that we use in therapy that's used in even biology. It's called homeostasis, which means that a system is going to want to maintain itself. And if the system becomes out of that maintenance, everything in the system is going to work together to bring the system back into maintenance, even if the maintenance was something that no longer is functional for the system. So if the system has always been that, I'm going to say it in a very rudimentary fashion, but I've always been the one that gives in and takes over so that other people do not have to be uncomfortable, and the other people have been on the other side of that. If there's a shift in that, everybody's going to be uncomfortable. Everybody is going to work to try to make the system go back to where it was, including you. Because even if something is dysfunctional and everybody knows it, the system has a tendency to want to go back to where it was. And we can apply this to all systems, but right now we're just talking about work systems, right?
Sure. Let's say I'm a leader that's trying to reclaim some of my power in this balance of give and take, and the system is shaken up and it's fighting to get back to homeostasis. What's my next step to not drop back to the way things were, where even though it's dysfunctional, it feels comfortable because that's where I've been living?
I think that anytime there's a shakeup, it is an opportunity for development. So is this something that you can use for the whole team? There are some changes that need to happen and kind of get everybody on board with the changes, or at least have a discussion about it. Not everybody's going to be on board, but is it an opportunity to grow the team?
Yeah. What would you say to someone listening right now that's just like, I just feel so exhausted, and even in my personal life, I feel like I'm always giving and I don't feel like I get the same thing in return? What would you say to them? Because I heard something that I thought, ooh, let's remind everyone of that. It sounded like obligatory guilt. If you're giving from an obligatory guilt feeling, I feel obligated to do this, I feel guilty to celebrate, obligated to celebrate this birthday. That could be a clue. But yeah, speaking to that person that's just like, I'm always the one and I'm tired. What would you say?
So the bigger picture to this is, if you believe this, that we are all here to learn a life lesson, and that our soul, prior to coming into this particular body, says to the universe, I want to come down and learn a particular life lesson.
Love it.
Hypothetically, let's say that everybody who is an overgiver or an oversharer, they probably have a very similar life lesson, which is to create boundaries and love yourself more, be more in touch with your own feelings. And so until that lesson is successfully learned, you're going to keep feeling all these feelings that you're talking about, which could be emotional or then manifest themselves physically in your body as frequent headaches or muscle aches, or all kinds of things, feet problems with your feet, or all kinds of dis-ease in your body, because it manifests in there. And anytime that you feel dis-ease in your body of some sort, it is a sign that you are continuously not learning the life lesson that you're here to learn. So if you are somebody who's experiencing that at work, then my guess is this is part of your life lesson, and your body is, that because it's something that you're experiencing not just at home, but in all areas of your life. And so if that go back to what we were talking about before, you could come in and talk about the content of the week. Hey, there was another year where my birthday came by. Nobody, I got some texts, but that was about it. Nobody even brought a cake to work or whatever. Or you can talk about the bigger picture, which is this also happening at home? Do you feel like this was happening when you were a kid, that you ended up being the one that, took care of everybody else, but nobody, if you were going to set up things with your friends, you were the one who always made those calls and decisions and set everything up, but nobody did the opposite. You were constantly putting in the energy to all of your relationships. And yes, of course it's going to play out at work, because it's playing out in all areas of your life. That is now an opportunity to say, what is it that I'm not learning successfully? Because until I do, I'm going to keep feeling this discomfort, this disease, etc.
So I would also offer, in that beautiful way that you described, we are here to learn certain life lessons, right? The planet Earth, the school of planet Earth. I wonder and I believe this, if also those individuals, I tend to identify as an overgiver, by the way, are here to learn how to wildly receive.
Well, you're probably making a good point, because those same people, if someone said I'm going to do this themselves, would say, "Oh, no, it's fine. I don't need that kind of whatever." So even if somebody did offer it, they're not going to receive it.
Yeah. And I bring that up because it feels, with that overgiving and that out of balance, and let me be a hyperachiever, let me do this, let me make everybody comfortable. There is a little power in giving that you can get when you're doing things like that.
Yeah.
I know that, you can experience that. However, I also want to offer in this life lesson piece, everyone to remember every day, what is it like to be open to wildly receive? If you are somebody that is on that overgiving side. If you're a taker, don't take that advice from me right now. I'm just kidding. But what is it like to wildly receive? What does that feel like? And just set that intention out every morning. I'm open to wildly receive today, and kind of see where your day takes you. Anyways, I'm going off but I had to share that.
No, I think you make a good point, right? Because we're sometimes taught that if you do allow yourself to receive something, wildly receive something, that you're being selfish or what have you. There's definitely some rhetoric associated with that.
Yeah. And how do I work through? The only way you can work through letting go of that is by continuing to receive and working through those feelings, and that you are worth. I think that'll build your self-worth as well, at work, at home, and all of those things. Yeah.
Another point that you're uncovering is that sometimes you create a story about who you are. And if the only way that you're going to support your story, like, I'm the one who always overgives and nobody ever does this for me. And if you're really attached to that story, you're not going to be open to receive, because it's a part of your story, and that would impact who you thought you were. Going back to the homeostasis. If I'm not that person anymore, if I'm not the overgiver, then who am I? That's a bigger question.
So I'll take it. Who am I? I am a balanced, energetic giver and receiver. Are those even words? But I'm going to say that, right? I give and receive in balance. And so, anyone listening, release that identity of overgiving, I think is a big point of wisdom that you just shared, for sure. Okay, Becc, what do you think a quantum leader is?
So when I think of the word quantum, I'm thinking next level, right? Because this is the second time the word quantum has come up in this conversation.
I was just thinking that too, yeah.
And I think quantum is somebody who thinks both rationally and emotionally, and allows for both of those. Because I don't know about you, but when we were growing up, if you thought with your emotional mind, you were seen as vulnerable and weak.
Yeah.
So empathic people who, cry at the drop of a hat when they're watching sad movies or something, was seen as
commercials.
Yeah, Hallmark. Yeah. It was seen as a vulnerability. So if you're able to lead with both, I think that's a quantum leader. And that's a balance. I tell people, if you believe in survival of the fittest, as we continue to develop as humans, there are pieces of us that we don't need anymore, and they've been bred out. So we have a set of wisdom teeth that most people have removed, but we don't use them because we use them to chew when we're eating more bones and rocks and things like that. And do you know that there are people now being born without those wisdom teeth? So when we don't need things, they are genetically pulled out of the equation. I'm no scientist, so I'm not using scientific terms, but when we don't need them, then we're seeing that future generations don't have them. But we still continue to have the same emotions. And that is because they're not a vulnerability. They are a part of who we are as a human. They're not bred out of us. We need them. So they're a piece of the equation. So for people to lead without their emotion, you're leaving a piece behind. So the next level of leader is going to lead with a balance of rational and emotional.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. All of it, right? The IQ, the EQ, and the SQ.
That's a tough thing to teach people, but yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the SQ. It's the top of the pyramid. That's what I coach. and you get to SQ by way of EQ. So I think that was a really great way to talk about that balance. I'm going to pull a journal prompt card for you from my journal prompt card deck. This one's just coming out. So, okay, like this, I can't right now because we literally talked this whole episode and this card was just like, coming out of the deck.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
Yeah. And more just, yeah. So we just got generosity and we talked about giving this entire conversation. Wow. So this is it. So like we're getting generosity, right? After we talked about being wildly open to receive, like how are we balancing that? So generosity, the affirmation is, I celebrate the success of others, knowing there is plenty for us all. I celebrate the success of others, knowing there's plenty for us all. And guess what? The question is on the journal prompt card I authored 2 years ago. Becc, how can someone truly give and receive in a balanced way? I'm like, I can't believe we got this. How can someone truly give and receive in a balanced way? Yeah.
The first one is to understand where is the giving that you're doing, where is that coming from? Is it truly from your heart, or is there something else behind it, an ulterior motive? And if you're giving of pure heart and this is something that you want to do, then don't allow any other thoughts to come in that say this is unfair or nobody does this for me. When 100% of you says this is where I want to be and I'm doing this because I truly want to give, then that's where you're going to have balance.
And let it go from there, right? It came from that place. You can't expect anything back. Correct?
I mean, you can, but it's not going to be balanced if you do.
Right. And I would offer on the receiving side that if you feel like you're an overgiver, just try to dip your toes into the water of what it feels like to receive. Sit in that uncomfortability.
Exactly. It is uncomfortable. And we've been taught that it's not okay to receive, that it's somehow selfish. But do we give to ourselves? And so if you don't give to yourself, nobody else is going to. You're going to model treating yourself. That's how other people should treat you. It's not going to come the other way around, that first they're going to do it, give to you, and then you're going to say, okay, I'm worthy of it. You have to believe that you're worthy of it for other people to give that back to you.
Yeah. I think that's an amazing point to end on. You have to give to yourself first. You have to model that you are somebody that deserves receiving great things. And then other people will follow suit with what you're modeling, not the other way around. If you're waiting around for someone to prove or to start giving to you to prove that you're worthy, it starts with you.
We started off on people pleasing. And sometimes people pleasing is I'm going to please other people and hope that people will let me know that I'm good enough. And if I please enough people, then somebody's going to tell me, yes, you're good enough, you're worthy. But the issue is that never works, because if you don't believe it, if you don't put that out there that I'm worthy, then other people are not going to believe it.
Yeah. So powerful. Really, it starts with you believing that you are good enough, and you can't rely on someone else to tell you. Love it. Becc, how can people connect with you and learn more about your work? And yeah.
Oh, thank you. So I have, my website is Becc Nelson, BECC Nelson.com. And on there you can have, there's links to both of my books. And if I can say, if I don't get bleeped out, my book is Cut the Shit.
Yeah, say it all. Wait, what is it called? Cut the Shit. How funny. Yeah, that's right. I knew that. Like, what am I talking?
And that's all about the patterns, because what we're talking about, that those patterns of behavior where we say, why isn't everybody else around me needs to change so that I can be happier? And really that's giving away your power and lowering your vibration. So these are different patterns that I noticed over my years as a therapist that I call you out on. And there's also a related journal, which the more journal prompts for the book, and it is called The Reveal. And there's links to both of my books on my website. But there's also every month I have a webinar that goes over my 90-day spiritual coaching package that talks about how to attract relationships to you that give back the energy and attention that you put into them without feeling guilty or undeserving or needy.
Perfect. Thank you for all those resources. I think the work that you do is very valuable and needed. So thank you. And we will put all the links in the show notes. So if you're listening, you just have to click on the link in the show notes and it'll take you to anything you're interested in from what we talked about today. So Becc, thank you for being a guest on Create Magic at Work.
Woohoo! Thanks for having me.
Do you have this feeling that you were called to do something very special and important in the world? Do you consciously tune into something higher than yourself for guidance and inspiration? Have you had mystical or spiritual experiences that have provided guidance in your everyday life and work? If you answered yes to those 3 questions, then you are a fit for a Create Magic at Work coaching program. If you're looking to explore new frontiers in your personal and professional life, I invite you to consider stepping into one of my coaching programs. I specialize in helping people step outside of their comfort zone and embrace the unknown. Whether you're looking to launch a new business venture, navigate a major life transition, or simply push yourself to reach new heights, I can help you achieve your goals. Please schedule a complimentary consultation with me at createmagicatwork.net. Click on Work with Amy, and I can't wait to see you. Sending magic to you. Hi everyone, Amy Lynn Durham here. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. All the show notes and links can be found at createmagicatwork.net, or you can just look in the show notes in the episode and they're right there for you. Come back each week and make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Keep joining us for more exciting episodes where we help you transform workplace culture to leaders that create less drama and stress and have high productivity and profitability. You have the power to create a burnout-free workplace right now. You can gain access to my new course, Create a Burnout-Free Team and Workplace, where you'll receive step-by-step tutorials in creating a team and organization that thrives. Click the link in the show notes to join us. I hope we brought a little magic to your day. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.